Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, today I got a fun follow-up video for you guys today because maybe 3 or 4 months ago I did a video on a work-in-progress translation of Queen of Queens on the NEC PCFX, and to say this game is absolutely over-the-top, strange, weird, and confusing would be an understatement. This was one of the games that was basically alongside the PCFX as showing off the power of NEC's new hardware, the successor to both the PC Engine in the East and the TurboGrafx 16 in the West. And honestly, I'm not sure what NEC and Hudson Soft were thinking when they decided what to take all of the genres of all of the games that worked on the PC Engine and completely change them up on the PCFX. But there is some love out there for this weird hardware, and Paul Daniel has improved upon his translation, basically buttoning the entire thing up, even going so far as to telling me that there might be a physical release of this game in the future. I absolutely love dedication to these weird, also ran consoles and these completely janky, strange games, and getting an English translation is going to make this game way more playable. That isn't to say that it is easy to play. Paul Daniel captured this footage for me personally, because anytime I try to play this game, I absolutely just cannot figure out what the hell it is I'm supposed to do. It might just be a timing issue. Even on real hardware, I'm not the greatest at stuff like this, but there's a guide to play the entire game, and now every single menu, every single bit of text here is going to be in full English. You'll see that that was a Yankee suplex, probably just called a suplex in North America, but the Yankee term probably came over because it is a Japanese game. And it's stuff like this that I always find time for on the channel video wise, even if it might not do the best views compared to other stuff I would talk about, because there's just something so strange and unique about these games, and because you can't understand them unless you live in Japan or at least speak or read Japanese, it's giving this to a whole new audience and giving us something that we never had before. That dedication to modding a game, an FMV wrestling game for women's wrestling in Japan, just shows that there's a fan out there for absolutely everything, and we depend on fans like Paul to actually bring us these experiences. Now, I'm sure this is a game that maybe some of you have heard of before in the "Why did the PCFX fail" category of articles and videos, and honestly, even though the PCFX was not a success, there is a decent amount of love on it. I don't know if you're going to love Queen of Queens or not, but you definitely should experience it, because honestly, it's a very unique game in its genre, although on the Sega CD there were a couple other FMV fighting games, and I would say those were definitely not as successful as this, but it was one of those things. Once you could do full motion video on home consoles, pretty much every developer out there thought maybe we could make a fighting game in that actual technology. And you'll see here on all of the different wrestlers in the game, which are apparently famous female wrestlers in Japan. It's not something I know about. All of their moves are in English, and all of the inputs are going to be listed for you. And you'll see there it says midway. Basically, you need to put that input in midway through the video so that it'll actually register in that frame window. And that's something that I never understood before, because this was all in Japanese, and I wouldn't really understand how that functioned. So you try to play the game, but interacting with it would be absolutely difficult. And there's just something about the presentation here. Kind of feels like a Flash game, also kind of feels like a 32-bit era game, because the video quality is quite good, coming down to the motion JPEG that the PCFX would use, but honestly that green kind of gradient moving around in the background feels like a Windows 3.1 or Windows 95 screensaver at the same time. And if you can't tell already, the developers that made this game definitely used the freeze frame function to the best of their ability to showcase what they wanted to showcase when it came to women's wrestling, if you know what I mean. But you get a decent amount of characters in here as well. Definitely have no idea who they are or what their overall abilities are, but it's one of those things. This is for fun, it's to play around with, and again, it is just impressive that somebody would spend the time to do something like this, translate it all over to English, because there's definitely not that many PCFX games out there, and there's a bunch that could come over to English and would be a lot more fun. If I had to take my pick of one I'd love to be able to understand better, it would be Last Imperial Prince, because that is legit a straight up hidden gem 32-bit action RPG game on the system. Unfortunately, without the storyline, it becomes very difficult to play it even with a guide. But something like Queen of Queens here, now with the English language in the actual game and the guide associated with it, you're going to be able to play this and understand exactly what you need to do. And this is the type of thing, just play it for 20-30 minutes, maybe have it out on the next game night. People are going to absolutely gravitate towards it, and I love that Grim Reaper animation that went through on that Deathlock as well. But it's soundtrack sample time, 45 seconds or so, and I'll be right back to talk more about the history of this game.
마도마제르 세리코
I mean, honestly, I'm not even sure what genre of music that would be, but the number one thing I'm thinking in my head is some sort of jazz Soviet anthem fusion. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. So as far as Queen of Queens is concerned, is there a good game here? It is totally subjective as to what you think about it. It is not a perfect game. It's not a complete failure. It is a game of its time and place. So when we take a look at it in 2025, of course, we could make fun of this, and I will say the NEC and Hudson Soft should have known better than to turn the PCFX into the type of game system they did. They were so successful on the PC Engine with so many incredible titles. Then when you come over to something like PCFX, you get all of one shmup and a beat 'em up, and then a couple other RPGs, but there were so many different dating sims and FMV games on this platform, you kind of have to wonder what audience they were really going for, because they had a good market share in Japan as far as the PC Engine and PC Engine CD are concerned. You would have thought their number one impetus in the boardrooms that they were dealing with who the system was for would be to say we want to keep that same market share and increase upon it, and you don't do that by making the PCFX. It is really good hardware, it is a 2D powerhouse, holding up to some of the best stuff on Sega Saturn in my opinion, but the game's library always confused people, and Queen of Queens is no different. But again, it is a vibe, it is a fun game. It's almost like the Mystery Science Theater 3000 of wrestling games, and if you are into Japanese wrestling, and I know a lot of you out there actually are, I hear about it in the comments all the time, there probably is a lot of love here. But from a historical standpoint, it is from a time and place where gaming was basically reinventing itself every single generation. When you go from the 360 to the Xbox One X to Series X or PlayStation 3, 4, 5, sure the graphics get better, but the games are basically solidified as this is what a video game is. But back in the mid-90s when you had PCFX, 3DO, and other systems on the market, along with PlayStation 1, Saturn, and 64, you could tell developers are basically trying to figure out what you could actually do with games, and stuff like Queen of Queens definitely comes out of that overall growing pain process. But even in 2025, you see indie developers using the FMV game format for new productions. Obviously, they have a lot better codecs, they have cinema cameras, they have the ability to have high production values at a much lower cost than they did back in the early to mid 90s. So it's almost like, at least on the indie side, game development is wrapping back around to some of those experiments that were taking place in the early to mid 90s and seeing what could be done today. So in some ways, Queens of Queens was ahead of its time, and in some ways it was behind the times, because honestly people just wanted a lot more shmups on the PCFX. But it's soundtrack sample 2 time right now. I'm going to do it a little bit longer here because the music in this game is definitely its strongest asset outside of the absolute over-the-top weird factor. So go ahead and listen for like 55 seconds this time, and I'll be right back with just a little bit more gameplay.
いい腕をしてるな。今回のところは我々の負けだ。おとなしく引き上げるとしよう。おめえら一体何者だ。軟弱化した人類を危惧する格闘集団とだけ言っておこう。
I mean, honestly, the music and the songs of this game are 10 out of 10s, and some of the music sounds like it could have slotted into nicely a Street Fighter Alpha 04 or any other Street Fighter game that just didn't exist because it has those vibes. So as far as Paul's work on the translation is concerned, it is exceptional. It is a ton of work because there is a lot of text in this game for all the character bios, and it makes a game more easy to play for an English audience. And as far as just the weird overall esoterica factor, Queen of Queens definitely has everything I need to make a video about it. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me if you ever played this game or heard of it before, because I would be curious. But we're done. We're going to keep up the good fight, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.